So, Mike, generally speaking, we know that older people are at higher risk, but 5 months does seem like a long time.
Yeah, it sure does, Shahan. A lot of questions around that announcement by Professor Karim last night alongside the health minister. But this is the age of the coronavirus, and it seems age actually plays a very important part, with officials saying that the elderly are particularly vulnerable. So let's focus on the age of corona and explore some stats which might put South Africa and its position in perspective. So this, Shahan, looks at the percentage of the population in each country around the world where a large percentage are actually above the age of 65. So every time you see a dark blue area, that's where you've got more than 15% of the population above the age of 65. And what's interesting here, Shahan, is that most of the dark blue spots are actually in North America, Canada, for example, as well as Western Europe. Most of the light blue spots are in the Southern Hemisphere, Africa, for example, which has not been hit to the same extent by the coronavirus. So that map is quite telling in terms of elderly populations around the world. And if we focus very quickly on our next graphic, Sean, then we'll get a sense of why this is so important. Take a look at these figures. Japan, 28% of the population above the age of 65. Italy, 23%. The United Kingdom, 18%. The US, 16%. What do all of those countries have in common, Shahan? Most of them have been ravaged by the coronavirus. 22,000 deaths already in the United States, more than 10,000 deaths in Italy. Japan, Shahan, has already declared a state of emergency around the coronavirus. So elderly populations seem to be under threat when it comes to this pandemic. If we look at South Africa, Shahan, we're actually much, much lower than the global average. Just 5% of our population is considered elderly. In other words, above the age of 65. Having said that, Shahan, I don't want to get ahead of myself. Let's quickly take a look at our next graphic, and you'll see what that actually means in terms of raw numbers. South Africa has 3.5 million people above the age of 65. So that is quite a substantial amount, and certainly when you're trying to manage a virus and protect lives, it's not insignificant. And, Shahan, if we focus on the future very quickly, we'll take a look at the growth rates, and you'll see that this is actually our fastest growing demographic. So our population as a whole, Shahan, growing about 1.4% per year. That's encompassing all age groups. But when you look at the elderly population, it's more than double that. This population growing at 3%. That's the legacy of the baby boom. A lot of children being born in the late 1950s and the 60s. And so we're now seeing those people entering the elderly age group. Shahan?
Yeah, thanks for the perspective on that. It really does help when you look at other countries, especially Italy, where you see so many deaths.
Yeah.
But we know that this plan is built around social distancing, and that's easier said than done.
It sure is, especially in South Africa. Let's focus very quickly on some other stats which we've got for you. And this will really put things in perspective, Shahan. So the research is finding that 14% of households in this country are triple-generation households. What does that mean? It means that you've got children, parents, and grandparents all in one household. And that translates into about 2.3 million homes where you've got grandparents living with their children and those children also having children. And this is interesting as well, Shahan. 5% of households in South Africa are skip-generation homes. In other words, the grandparents are looking after the children. And that means another 830,000 households where you've got grandparents interacting with young children. So all in all, Shahan, if you do the math, that's about 3.2 million homes where the elderly grandparents could be interacting with people who may have the virus but may not even be aware of it. So that presents some challenges to the government in terms of a partial lockdown. As you said, it might be easier said than done, because you can't simply just put the grandparents in another room for 5 months. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah, it definitely doesn't. Thanks for that. Appreciate it, Michael Marillier.